you did exactly what we talked about at the beginning. You got clear on some of the patterns. You took the knowledge that you have and the things that you understand and that you care about, and you found someone who also is really good at business that could come in and help support you in doing that. And you went out and you did it and you exited. Welcome to the Name Your Numbers show presented by the Investor Mindset. We're on a mission to create financial freedom for over 1 million investors. And I believe when you name your number, the number that you want to earn passively every single month, that creates your ultimate quality of life, then I believe you've achieved real freedom. So we're going to get into some really fun stuff today. I've got Armando Pantoja in the studio today. How are you doing today, Armando?
I'm good. And you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to dive in with you. A lot of people know you as Tall Guy Tycoon, and you've got a pretty prolific channel. For those of you who don't know Armando, talking a lot about investing, wealth building on stocks, crypto, real estate, and technology. You've built a business that you sold for $1 million. You've been investing in a lot of different things, and you're helping other people learn some of the same things. So we've got a lot in common. Before we get into all of that and your story, I'd love to start off on a personal note by looking back at your life. What events or influences from your childhood shaped who you are today? And how has that impacted your money or investing journey?
So I made a lot of my money on predicting what's coming next and capitalizing on it, right? So there's a story that I always talk about. And at the time, it didn't really dawn on me. It dawned on me years later, in my adult life. It's from my childhood. Now I grew up in the South, Tennessee. So in the South, and I grew up in the church also. So in the South, in the church, one of the biggest events is Easter. Everybody shows up in their best clothes. The pastor normally reserves his best sermon for Easter, and people that never went to church before or never went the entire year will show up. So every church is packed. And remember, Tennessee is it's the Bible Belt, right? So it's a huge event in most churches that people prepare for it for months. And one of the things that they do is a huge Easter egg hunt for kids, right? And that's one thing that as a kid, we look forward to, right? The Easter egg hunt, and a lot of times the church would say, to make it more exciting, to say, whoever gets the most Easter eggs will win a prize, right? So I was like 5, and this is the first time I ever remember doing an Easter egg hunt. So during the sermon, me and my brother, I was 5, my brother was 3. We're all excited. We weren't listening to what the pastor was saying. We're waiting for the Easter egg hunt. So when it happened, we go outside. All the kids line up line up at the edge of the field. And if you look out at this field as a kid, I just remember an endless field of eggs. But you know how you are when you're a kid. If I went back now, it'd probably be a small field. But as a kid, it looked like it was like millions of eggs, and it was like that's how I remember it. So my mom, she bent down. And she whispered in my ear, "Do exactly what I say and we'll win. Don't ask any questions. Just listen to me." All right. So the pastor screams out, "Go." He's the referee or whatever. So all the kids take one big step and they start grabbing eggs. My mom, she grabs me, my brother's hand. She starts running down the field. And at first, I remember the mothers of the church and other elders in the church they thought she was crazy. Is she stupid or something? She don't know that she's running past a lot of eggs. What? She don't see the eggs there? So my mom run. She gets to the end of the field and she bends down, tells me and my brother, "Now get the eggs," right? So it's nobody over there, right? So we start collecting. At the beginning, they were fighting over the eggs, grabbing them, other person grabbing it from you. You have to, you're in a fight for the eggs. You're in competition. Way down the field, there was no competition. Some kids realized what we were doing. They ran down there, but they were too late. So we ended up winning the competition because we were way ahead of everybody else. So we were able to see what was down the field, get ahead of everybody else where there's no competition. And that's how we won that Easter egg hunt. So I've applied that thinking to everything I do in investment. If you put yourself 6 months, a year, 2 years ahead of everybody else, there's no competition out there. Now, if you wait for stuff to catch up, it's too late. The stocks, if you're in the stock market, they're already up. If you're in building a company, it's already too late. There's too many competitors. If you're doing anything else, of that nature, you're too late if you wait for it to happen. You got to be ahead of the curve and you got to get out in front of everybody else. And that's where the most profit is made.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's where you can get clear on what's that unique advantage. How do you get into that blue ocean where nobody else is? And also, in order to get there, you got to know what's going on. You got to understand what are the trends, where are things going. I know that's something that you've become really good at. And I feel like a lot of people are unclear about, how do I start figuring out where the ball's moving, where the puck's moving. So how do you go about doing that? And let's break down that process for being able to determine, well, what's that next opportunity where no one's at yet, but a lot of people are going.
So it's like three parts that you have to kind of focus on in order to be able to predict trends. One is you just got to understand human psychology, right? Is that a lot of the markets, crypto, stocks, whatever, there's a pattern in how money moves in, money moves out. And it's based on human emotion, greed, fear, and all these other emotions, hype and all this stuff. That's what causes people to get into cycles, get out of cycles. So you have to understand that when most people get into an investment, it's too late. You have to understand that when your mom, your uncle, your cousin is talking about something, it's too late. Yeah. Right? You have to understand that. Second is that you have to understand history. And I'm not talking about like recent history. You have to understand the Roman Empire, Industrial Revolution, space race, the 80s, the stock market crash in 1920, the other one, Black Tuesday in the 80s. You have to understand the dot-com boom. You have to understand the crypto boom in the 1718. You have to understand all of that because it's a pattern that happens over and over and over and over again. So if you understand all that history, so the new stuff, and the last part is that you have to be aware of the opportunities, right? So now you understand human emotion. You understand we call it historical analysis in stocks, but also history itself. You have to be able to get, you got your base. You have to have new input coming. Now, if you sit at home and you don't do anything and you don't look up nothing and you have no context, no what we call circle of winners, people around you that can bring that new information, then you can't apply that stuff to anything. So you got to get out there, get around the right people, go to conferences, go to events, go to networking. That's where you are exposed to new ideas. And if you aren't exposed to them, you have no way of, like, if I don't even know something exists, I can't even research it. And that's how new things come into your life, is that you have to be exposed to it. Get around people that have more money than you, get around people that have more information than you, get around people who are active like you are in investments, in business, entrepreneurship, whatever, and those new ideas will flow in. Then you can apply those new ideas to the history, and you apply them to human emotion, and that's how you figure out what the next trend is most of the time.
Well, it's so powerful because when you start getting around other people who are already having success, that are already on that path, maybe they're miles down the road and maybe they're right alongside with you, but just a couple steps ahead, you can start understanding, hey, well, what's worked for them? How are they doing it? Oh, well, they're thinking about it like this. What if I thought about it like this? And then that's when you, as you said, you get around your circle of winners. That leads you to getting access to insider deals, insider information, the kind of opportunities that not everybody else is talking about. And maybe other people don't even recognize that there's an opportunity. And when you invest in those, you greatly reduce the risk, but you also greatly increase the upside potential. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in the market right now. People are scared. You're seeing institutions pull out of the stock market at a very, very large rate. Now, consumers and, the rest of us, traditional people, there's not as much movement there, but that can sometimes be an indicator. Now in real estate, we're dealing with high interest rates. There's a lot of fear. We're seeing in some areas it doesn't make sense at all to buy, while in other opportunities, only because we know the market, we're able to find deals that other people wouldn't know are deals. So when it comes to the types of investments that you do, right? You've focused fairly broadly on, both stocks and real estate. You've done some in the crypto space. I know you're very interested in AI. I think there's some huge opportunities for people, not only to be able to create more income, to be able to increase the value of that they have to a business or as an employee, but also from an investing standpoint. So talk to me a little bit about how you've gone about deciding to be so diversified across all these different sectors, and what's the mindset? What's the thinking on that? Why do you do that?
Now, it sounds like a broad spectrum, but I'm going to clear that up. Is that real estate is outside, right? It's something I'm learning, so I don't really talk about it much. It's something I'm really learning and trying to. I know that there's a good opportunity. I know that the risk is low, so I'm investing in real estate. But if you look at everything I talk about stocks and I talk about crypto and I talk about other investments. It's all tech based.
Yeah.
My background's in tech, right?
Yeah.
I was a software engineer for 15 years. So I rarely talk about or invest in stocks that are outside of tech.
Yeah.
So, and crypto is tech also, right? Yeah. So, and my background's in software, but also studied in grad school cryptology, which is what cryptocurrency is based on. So I kind of like, I'm kind of in a narrow investment, I guess, view. It looks diverse, but it's actually pretty narrow because it's always something to do with tech, AI, and all those things. It's always the base I have is my background in technology.
Yeah, there's such a big takeaway there because a lot of people would look and they'd say, hey, well, stocks and crypto and AI, like it seems diverse. It seems like a bunch of different things. But what you've identified as part of your way of thinking is, hey, what am I really good at? What do I really understand? What do I really understand? And how can I use that knowledge that I already have to go alongside those patterns to understand what's happening from a trend perspective? And how can that actually lead me into a place where I can make some decisions that other people aren't going to be able to make? So that's really big.
And that's what another point I want to make is that almost everybody has expertise in some industry and they don't even know it. Nurses understand, they're on the ground. They're on the front lines. They understand if a new medicine comes out, will the doctors accept it? They understand things like that, right? And one of the biggest plays I made was in the pandemic. I understood that everybody was going to move to Zoom because I worked for corporations and I knew what was going to happen. And that was from my, being on the ground on the front lines. And like I said, even if you're a mechanic, you know what people use and what they want. You can learn a little bit about stocks, learn a little bit more about investing, use that base knowledge that you have, and you have an advantage on everybody else. You just have to marry the two together.
And so when someone's sitting down and they want to get clear on what kind of opportunities they should be looking at, what are some of the questions you think they should ask themselves to get clear on what they're good at and what they know? The stock market and investments in general is very broad, right? And different things affect different stocks, different things affect different cryptos, different things affect real estate, right? So you got to kind of like I did, you focus on a narrow perspective on something that you do know, right? And you stick to that one thing and you're able to find success like that, right? If you try to be too broad, it's more difficult because you have to understand more angles and more data points to be able to make the right decisions. So I would always tell people to just stick in a certain industry, a certain sector, and focus on that until you learn it well. And then maybe you can go outside of that, but if you focus on one thing, all the stocks in this sector or industry are affected by the same things, the same macro events, the same economic events, the same laws being passed or whatever news being released or whatever it is. They all fall and rise together. So I would tell a new investor to find out what you're good at originally, and then find out a sector in the market that relates to that, and then start learning and start putting that knowledge that you already have to the test and see what you can make of it. Yeah, I think that's really good advice because sometimes it can be overwhelming. There's so many options when it comes to investing. There's so many options when it comes to starting a business. It's like, how can you triangulate between what you're really good at, what you know a lot about, and something that you care about that you want to continue knowing a lot about it, and you try to hit that little bullseye right in the middle. So I think you've got an incredible story. Not only have you become a great teacher on the investing side, helping to teach and inspire people about making those small investments today, regardless of where they're at, so they can get where they want to go. But I'd love to hear your story. I know you've started some businesses, you've worked in corporate jobs, you're investing in a variety of different things. How did you go from that place? What's the story of going from that place of being employed to creating and exiting a business and then eventually moving into a heavy focus on investing?
So So it started back in 2005. I graduated Austin Peay State University in Tennessee with a degree in computer science, right? So I went to Puerto Rico for a while, played basketball. That didn't work out like I thought it would. I played pro basketball for like a year and a half. And I wasn't as good as I thought. So I didn't, I played, but it wasn't like I thought. So I came back and said, well, I'm going to get a job in software engineering. So I started work for this company called EdgeNet in Nashville, Tennessee. EdgeNet was a artificial intelligence company. Now, people hear that and say, what? Back then, artificial intelligence has been out for 50 years. Yeah. So it's not like it was nothing, it's grown to now we're seeing stuff like ChatGPT and stuff. But back then it was just facial recognition. What that company did is that you'd build a new house, it would put the windows and doors onto the CAD drawing or whatever. Now it sounds easy, but back then it was hard, Yeah. You needed AI to be able to do that. Now it's like, we do that all the time, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I worked there, and I worked there for about a year, right? This was 2007. I started working there. So 2008 came along, and it was the mortgage crash, right? So they started firing people and letting people go for whatever reason. So I ended up getting fired from there. There was a big layoff, and they would fire like 50 people for anything they did wrong, and I was part of that group. Yeah. So I remember one of the biggest things that hit me is that I was completely and utterly dedicated to that job. I decorated my cubicle. I was excited to be there. And when that happened, they gave me a box when they fired me. So I had to go in there and fill my box with all my stuff. It was a security guard behind me, right? And I felt so bad. I told myself, I will never give this much of my energy to a corporation. Now, I believe in doing your best, working hard, but I'm never, I'm not going to think like this anymore. So after that, I moved to Florida. And I got a job. I went to grad school, and that's where I studied cryptology. So that's really where I discovered Bitcoin. I started that in 2009. And then I went to school for 2 years. Bitcoin came out 2009 also. I heard about it in 2011. I started investing in a little bit. So I had like $500 and I bought some Bitcoin. It was hard to buy it back then. I used to have to meet a guy at the casino down here in Florida, and he'd be playing poker, and you'd have to wait for him to finish a hand, and you'd buy it from him. In between his hands, you give him cash, he would open up your phone, and that's how you would get it. There was no Coinbase. Coinbase didn't come for 2 years later. There was very few sites to it. So I took that 500, and I didn't really know what to do with it, right? So I'm online looking at these forums about Bitcoin and the future of it, and this guy messaging me, and I don't think that forum exists anymore. He said, hey man, if you send me that 500 in Bitcoin, I can double it. And I was in grad school. Remember, I was struggling, and I was like, well, maybe this is true. It sounds weird, but maybe. And I sent him the money. And of course, he stole it, never got it back. But it made me think, if somebody wants it this bad, it must be valuable. So then I started researching the technology. I started researching all this other stuff, how it works. And so I wouldn't get tricked again. So, some time went on. I got out of grad school. So I wanted to build a company, right? So I started a company called APAN Software. And we did custom software for people in the Tampa Bay area. The first 2 years, I did extremely well. The last year, because of a change in the SEO, Google's algorithm, I could no longer get leads anymore. So it hit me kind of hard. So we couldn't get any leads. I had 14 employees, ended up having to let everybody go. Went into a whole bunch of debt, $180,000 in debt, because I had a lot of pride, didn't want to give it up. Yeah. So I ended up having to give it up after I had that much debt. It was kind of piling up on me. So I tried to go bankrupt. The terms of the bankrupt was so strict. I didn't want to go through that. So I said, well, I got to pay this off. So I applied for a good job at Google, right? And I said, well, if I can't start my own company, maybe I could work for Google. That was my second dream. So I got through the first two interviews, and they didn't pick me from the third interview. So I studied for 6 months for that interview. They have study guides and stuff. Google is so hard to get into. And I was really depressed. Like, I was like, oh man. So I got another call, AAA, the auto company that, roadside assistance. They also have insurance, travel. They have a bank. So it's actually a lot bigger than just car care. But so they called me up and said, hey man, we want to interview you. And I went to the interview, and I really didn't want the job. So I was like slumped down in the chair, answering questions. And the thing about it is that I got the job. So that job ended up paying me more than it was the highest paying software engineer job in Tampa Bay. Right. And it was actually a good company. Right. So, but I still had in the back of my mind, I'm not, even though that company was the best company I ever worked for, it was a great company. I still didn't want to depend too much on the company. So I never brought anything in my cubicle. I never, because I didn't want to go through the experience again. So at night, I remember I had that debt to pay off. So I was a teacher at a college at night. So for 2 years, 2.5 years, I would work all day to 5 o'clock, and at night I'd be a teacher for 4 hours for 5 days a week. I don't even remember, I was working so much, I don't even remember my first 2 years of my daughter's life at all. So I paid off $180,000 in debt in 2.5 years. So then I was like, well, I want to start another company, right? So I started another crypto company called ICO Ranker. Remember, I didn't have any money, but I didn't have any debt either. So I'm in a decent position.
But you took the skills that you had on developing websites and understanding the algorithms to be able to build this site, which was something that was ahead of the trend, because ICOs back then that's early days.
So like I said, as I learned about SEO in the company that failed, how to rank stuff on Google. I also learned, like you said, build websites, build stuff, how to add artificial intelligence in because of that company I worked for before. So all of those skills ended up at that point. So I got a business partner also because I didn't want to really handle everything. It was a guy I knew. He was used to be a stockbroker. So we both, it wasn't a lot of money. It took like $10,000 because I was doing all the work, right? So I built it in about 2 months. We put it out there and then it started getting traction. And I'm like, oh man, this is kind of good. So, and then it made me, it inspired me to work harder on it. Then it just kept growing and growing and growing. At one point it had like 1.2 million hits a month, like ridiculous. Wow. We were getting like maybe 80 to 100,000 just on ads, a month, right? For the first 4 months, right? And then a company, the 5th month, a publicly traded company from Canada called us up and said, we want to buy that into technology. All right, well, how much you want to give me? And in my mind, I was thinking like 500,000 or something. And they were like, and my business partner said, nah, it's worth way more than that because of the potential, because of the revenue and stuff like that. And he asked for 3 million for it. And then they came back for 2.5. Then we negotiated. And then we got warrants and we got stock options and we got stock. So we got the 2.5 plus all this other stuff. It ended up being after we sold and everything like $4 million, $4.5 million. Because the stock went up after we made the deal because we were on a lockup period for 6 months. So that's when I became a millionaire.
What I'm curious is, what did that feel like to go from the place where you had that failure, negative 180, you had to let 14 people go. You had to go back to getting a job, something that you said you weren't going to put that much into again. And you knew in the back of your mind you were going to go do this. What did it feel like to have that exit and all of a sudden to be a millionaire?
Now, I remember the day, it was like a surreal moment, because it was through a broker, right? So the broker would take his cut and then he sent us both like 1.15 million. So I'm looking at my bank account and refreshing. And all of a sudden there's $1 million in there. It was like nothing in there right before that. And I'm like, this don't even seem real. Like it was so surreal. It didn't seem real. Right. And then later on the warrant money came and whatever. And it was 2.5 million, it was a lot of money. Right. So I didn't get excited. I didn't jump up and down. It was like because after what I've been through, it was so surreal that I just didn't even get excited. It was like, I don't know this, I don't know how to explain that. So what I did do is that I was working at AAA at the time. And I remember it hit the news because it was at the time, it was a big cryptocurrency, acquisition at that time. I mean, now they are a lot bigger, 50 million, 100 million, but at the time it was a lot. So it was in the news and everything. So all my family knew about it and they're calling up, you're going to quit your job. And I was confused at that. Like, why would I quit?
Yeah.
I was making like $180,000 a year. I was like, well, in 5-6 years, I would run out of money anyway. So, so what I did is I kept working there almost for an additional year. So I took that at the time, it was roughly like $2 million. And I started investing it because I said, when my income surpasses what I'm making as a software engineer, that's when I'll quit off my investments. So I bought some real estate. I put some in Bitcoin, put some in some dividend stocks, bought some other stocks, and we put some money into private equity with a company. And then after my investment income surpassed my salary income, that's when I quit a year later.
Yeah. And I think that's so cool because it's just such a great example of when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's about going out and trying new things, taking the L, going back, doing it again, figuring out what do I have to do to make money now to cover my family? What do I have to do to pay off this debt? What do I have to do to set myself up to try something new? You took $10,000 in 2 or 3 months of your time and then hours and hours of time after that to build this website that you sold in a very short amount of time for a very big exit. And it was because you did exactly what we talked about at the beginning. You got clear on some of the patterns. You took the knowledge that you have and the things that you understand and that you care about, and you found someone who also was really good at business that could come in and help support you in doing that. And you went out and you did it and you exited. But you did the smart thing because you didn't immediately just say, hey, well, I just had money. I'm going to go and I'm going to quit and I'm going to hope that I can figure this out and do another business. You said, hey, I'm going to make sure that I'm covered. Let me figure this thing out so I can start thinking like an investor and make sure that I'm actually free, that I know that the money that I have can then work for me to put me in an even better place than where I am today. And once you did take the leap, you were then in a position where you could take that skills and that knowledge and have the confidence to continue to make those investments, learn new things. And most importantly, I think what a lot of people overlook is that because you had that freedom financially, because you had that money, you were able to then have the space and time to figure out what's that next thing. And since then, obviously, you've built a lot of things. You've made a lot of investments. You're teaching people some of this stuff because you're taking the skills that you already have. And I want the listeners to understand, because I'm taking away some inspiration here as well, but I want everybody to understand like the power of that. It doesn't all happen at once, but it can build. And then all of these skills that you develop really can pay off in a great life.
Yeah, like I said, is that the whole process took like 10 years, right? And I had that software coding, but I started small businesses before that. Even in high school, I had an eBay store and stuff like that. Everything was so hard. Like everything I did was so difficult. Like I'd have to work all night and fight and all this stuff. The last business and everything the business I ended up selling and everything else has been incredibly easy. It's almost like everything I touched at the beginning, everything I touched turned to dirt. Now it all turns to gold. And that's exactly what you said, is that because when I was going through all that struggle, I was building up skills that I didn't know. I didn't even know. You even put it like really, really well. And you said, I never even thought about that. The SEO, the background in artificial intelligence, and the website building led me to ICO Ring Card. And I never put that together until you said it. But that's exactly what was happening over those years. Is I was building myself up and I didn't know it, right? And then when the time came, it was incredibly easy to make a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's so much to take away from that. And oftentimes we can't really put the pieces together looking forward. We can create a vision of our dream life and the things we want to do and the people we want to spend time with and how we're going to live and work and the impact we're going to make. All of those things, we can have that vision, but sometimes it's hard to put each individual puzzle piece together when we're looking forward about how we're going to get there. But it's funny because when we look back, we're like, wow, I never thought that business that didn't work out actually set me up to get this mentor, this partner, this connection, this thing that ended up putting me in a different place. And it's really a combination of those skills that ends up leading us to be in that place, to have the knowledge and the confidence to then try new things.
Yeah, it's like everything in your story I believe, is there for some type of reason, and you're building a skill or you're doing something. It's almost like on the Karate Kid, where the guy's like, he has to put his coat on the rack and keep putting it up. And then he's like, what am I doing this for? Then at the end, he realized he's building a strong foundation to fight with. And so it's like that, right? Is that when you live your life, that's exactly what you're doing. You're building up these skills that you didn't even know that you're going to need one day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really powerful. So we're getting close to the end of time. I'm really enjoying some of the lessons that you've been able to share with us. I've got one last question to wrap up. Before I do, will you tell the audience a little bit about how they can follow you and continue the lessons that they're learning here on any of your channels?
All right. So I'll go by the name Tall Guy Tycoon, TallGuyTycoon. and that's on Instagram. Instagram is my biggest platform. YouTube is second. Also LinkedIn is the same name, and TikTok. But I use Instagram and YouTube more than any other two. And I also have a book out called The Strategic Millionaire, which talks about a lot of the things we've been talking about today. The Strategic Millionaire. It's on Amazon.
That's great. Well, you guys should definitely grab a copy of The Strategic Millionaire because Armando is really onto some stuff. He's got a lot of great lessons learned. I know we've just touched the surface, so we'll have to have him back for a follow-up episode. But kind of wrapping up on this, Armando, what's your advice to the listeners who are sitting back as they're taking in this knowledge, they're looking at creating their dream life? They want to gain that skill and knowledge. They want to have the confidence. What advice do you have to them to gain that confidence when it comes to money and finance?
The biggest thing I would say is that you can't sit back and wait. Because, you can't sit back. Like we say, indecision is worse than a bad decision. It's because if I jump into an investment, I'm not saying with a lot of money, but if I jump into stocks, jump into whatever, and I mess up, I'm learning from that experience. There's really no such thing as failure, because if we look at everything either as a lesson or a win, failure don't exist in that world, right? So if you put your money in a stock or whatever, and you thought it was going to work, it doesn't work out, well, you learn something from that, So instead of sitting on the sidelines waiting for the perfect time or being indecisive, jump into something, not a lot of money, like I'm saying. And if it doesn't work out, at least you learn. It's a bad decision where we can change course on bad decisions. But if you're indecision, you can't change course. You're just sitting there wasting time. So I would just say a lot of times when we jump into any entrepreneurship, whatever, you're never ready. Never. To start a business or get into stocks or you're never going to be ready. Even the president's not ready when he steps into office because he's never been president before. How does he know how to do it? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he learns on the job like the first 6 months. Everybody does. So it's nothing wrong with that. And I'm just saying is that sometimes you just have to execute.
Yeah. Comes down to taking that action, making that decision. Such great advice, Armando. So great to talk with you. So good to connect. Follow Armando at Tall Guy Tycoon on all platforms. Really appreciate you guys listening, and we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Investor Mindset Podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with a friend. Head over to theinvestormindset.com to join the Insider Club, where we share tools and strategies from the top investors and entrepreneurs on how to take it to the next level.